The grass is greener, the ocean is more serene, the coconut milk, it's sweeter, so the
whole Pacific is experiencing this phenomenon of urbanization, where people are moving from villages and rural settlements into the urban centers, cities and towns.
Urbanization is here. We need not to fight against it, but to minimize the effect and work among ourselves to work within the effect of urbanization.
Rapid urbanization was not on our screens 30 years ago. No one was really aware of what urbanization was doing or was going to do.
City lights are calling, yeah. The city lights are calling, yeah. The city lights are calling.
When we're comparing urbanization rates, it's because many countries and territories have different definitions of what constitutes urban, what constitutes a town. Normally, when we refer to an urban area as to a rural area, we look at some of the characteristics of the population, we look at some of the characteristics of the physical geography, of characteristics of infrastructure. I think the most commonly agreed upon characteristics would be it has to have a minimum amount of people living in contiguous spaces, like a concentration of housing, a concentration of settlements.
People move to towns and cities for various reasons. Many prefer the facilities offered in urban centers that are lacking in rural areas. Some move to towns and cities to pursue further education, to find work, to access health centers and hospitals, to use utilities and infrastructure like water supply and roads, which otherwise is hard to get back in their homes in the village or isolated settlements. As cities extend their borders to accommodate a range of economic and social activities, authorities both at the national and local government levels are fraught with finding not only long-term solutions, but innovative plans that will work.
So what that would mean is that not only the government agencies will be coming together, you will bring in the civil society, you will bring in the community groups, because some things are best done by communities. You would also bring in not just the health experts, but you may need to bring in someone who knows something about water and water dynamics, you think about environment, talking about people who can then look at the costs and benefits of some of these areas. So you then so innovative approach also means that you're bringing together people from different expertise to help solve a particular problem and then design a solution.
Finding a solution to control the influx of people into towns and cities is not a mean feat.
It's really a very difficult problem, very difficult problem. We mentioned in our earlier discussions that in the past there was a dedicated effort to limit the movement of people from the outer islands to Tarawa. In the colonial days, they actually come around to the houses and they count numbers of people and they say, what are you doing here if you're not from this household? Or I'm just here to sell my saltfish, or the next ship is on that day, your name is down, you be on that. Sometimes you almost wish there is a little bit more autonomy and a little bit more authority to say this and that, to address crucial issues like urbanization.
As Pacific Island countries come to terms with tackling the issues of urban development, there are some countries taking the lead in dealing with this issue. Samoa is one such country. It established a planning urban management agency, PUMA, to manage developments while at the same time looking at keeping the strong cultural stronghold it has on issues, whether they be urban or rural.
It's a new area for Samoa and obviously for the Pacific. with the sensitivities of land, land tenure, and local governance of these resources. It's quite a sensitive issue for a national body to go out and start prohibiting or acting as a regulator on these resources. So what we've been trying to do is just apply a soft touch in terms of providing the education, providing information for our stakeholders to be aware of. These are the concepts that we're interested in exploring, and you'll find that a lot of them are also voicing their opinions of the demand for some form of town planning.
Samoa's PUMA is setting the pace in the region by incorporating laws that affect and consider the roles and responsibilities of other government agencies.
You'll find that the development control aspects of the legislation has been adhered to meticulously. That's something that we've been able to realize quite effectively and immediately. However, there are other elements within the legislation, such as sustainable management plans or land use plans or planning schemes that we haven't yet been able to realize. However, we are exploring opportunities to pilot some of these concepts.
The world's population grew rapidly from 220 million to 2.8 billion during the 20th century. The UNFPA 2007 report on urbanization predicted that urban population will double between 2000 and 2030. In the Pacific, the population is expected to reach 9.5 million in 2008, of which more than half live in urban centers.
The statistics actually tell us that we are already talking about 1 in 4 persons living in urban areas to start off. That's really one of the statistics. We're moving towards almost 50% of our population that will be residing in urban cities, towns, or peri-urban areas. So that's one part of it. It's not just a question of numbers, but the real challenge is that can we now provide them with appropriate housing, infrastructure, the kinds of basic services of water, waste management, etc., for this large influx of people coming in.
Samoa's population, as recorded in 2001, was 176,710, with 22% living in urban centers, with an urban growth rate of 1.3 against a national growth rate of 0.9. Fiji's population has dramatically increased since the census of 1996. In 2007, the population count stood close to 1 million people. Like other Pacific Island countries, the major shift in population in Fiji is felt amongst young people.
From the provisional count that we have, the urban population increased by slightly over 60,000 people, and the rural population decreased by about 9,000. So there has been a continuous shift from the rural areas to the urban areas, and this was quite marked for the Indian component of the population. And even if you look at the percentage of the population that's urban, it has increased from 39% in 1986 to 46% in 1996. And from the provisional count, it's now 51%. 51% of Fiji's population is now in the urban areas. So Fiji can now be categorized as urbanized because more than 50% of the population are now living in the urban areas. What we are observing from the data that we have processed so far is a marked decline in the number of population in the age group 15 to 24. We are associating that with people moving over into the urban area for education and so forth, because the educational institutions are mainly in the urban areas. So what this means is that this will be a continuing trend, and these are people who are at a reproductive age. So we don't expect the number of persons moving to the urban areas to slow down in the coming years or so, unless of course there are significant developments in the rural areas that can draw them back. But we will continue to see this growth in the urban areas given the current trends.
Like all its Pacific Island neighbors, Vanuatu's population was close to 200,000. In 2000, the population of Kiribati was close to 85,000. Of this number, 43% live in the urban centers of BETIO and BARIKI.
When countries only run a census every 10 years, like in the case of Fiji, in the case of Papua New Guinea, the case of the Solomons, the case of Vanuatu, we're talking about the 4 largest countries in the region. It is very difficult to make any kind of inferences on a timely basis, 6, 7, 8 years down the track, to give the politicians, to give the policymakers, to give the private sector, to give anybody kind of a fair account of what the socio-economic, the social-demographic characteristics of its population.
Vanuatu is a nation coming to terms with swift developments, particularly in its 2 main centers of Port Vila and Luganville. This has prompted the government of Vanuatu to realize the need for policies on urbanization.
The problems seem to be overpowering the system, mainly because of capacity and budgetary constraints. Like, for example, at the moment we do not have a proper urbanization plan or policy, although we're in the process of trying to come to grips with that. But it's a new area, and we don't have the necessary resources in the form of people and finance to really come to grips with the issues that, the challenges that the urbanization poses.
As the urban population continues to grow, the quality of life is often compromised. Signs of this diminishing quality of standards of living have already begun to manifest itself in major towns and cities across the region. The reality in urban families is not of urban plans and developments, but of day-to-day survival. Food on the table, security of land, shelter, having enough money to pay for clothing, food, electricity and school bills takes a priority over long-term development policies.
I got wounds, hold back the tears when it's time to move.
Many developments in the urban Pacific are largely unplanned. So there are, for example, in cities like Suva, there are numerous suburbs that have literally grown on their own overnight. So many squatter settlements, for example, they're unplanned and they're not serviced.
The problem now with most countries in the Pacific, they have planning, but I don't know whether those plans are being used. Many of them, they develop planning for planning's sake, and they just ignore, forget about it. And I think it is time now that they do a more serious kind of planning so that they can be more strategic in this kind of environment with the problems that urbanization is bringing.
Informal settlements like this one in Fiji are becoming a common sight. But Fiji is not alone. This is quickly becoming a trend across the Pacific and can also be seen in Samoa, Kiribati and Vanuatu.
In Port Vila at the moment, I think it's okay at the moment. We don't have people begging around in town. We still have people coming in and living in Port Vila with their families, but it's still surviving. Although people, they say, we're too much in the family, we're too much here, Sometimes it costs a lot of electricity bills, usage, and water bills. Sometimes they pay very high, and the food, for example. But people, they're comfortable at the moment. It's a big issue, but we still manage it. But in 5-10 years' time, with this increase of population and more demands of needs and wants, and I'm sure we will be heading somewhere, and the government needs to look at this seriously, as I said.
For national, local and international institutions, finding a livable urban future for the masses or the urban poor is also a priority. In Samoa, the streets of our pier are slowly being filtered by beggars and street kids. For Samoa, this site is new and does not portray the cultural values it holds dear to its heart.
Because there's a lot of people who are kind of criticizing the Fat Samoa, say it's expensive, very expensive. And that's why it turns off some of our young people. But of course you want to retain our culture, like you. You have your own culture. In the Pacific, this is why we're proud to be Pacific people, the Pacific way. So without our culture and our Pacific culture, we don't have a Pacific way. We don't have an identity.
From CLGF point of view, we're trying to help also countries, and we are working with organizations like FSPI, UNDP Pacific Center, the Forum, and USP to do a research on how we can amalgamate or integrate tradition with Western systems so that countries can be able to use these two avenues to progress with what is urbanization is bringing.
Authorities are faced with issues of soaring poverty, mounting needs for proper housing, infrastructure and amenities, multiplying demands for basic services, escalating crime rates as a result of unemployment and growth in urban population. The Pacific Urban Agenda, or PUA, is the result of a collective approach of governments in the region to tackle urbanization in its challenges. The PUA initiative was organized and supported by the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, CLGF, the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ESCAP, and the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat. PUA promotes sharing of information on urban planning and management, ways in which development partners can support urbanization plans and responses to meet the challenges ahead.
So I think, we're slowly seeing a change on people, the countries themselves trying to work out their own visions of what this planning thing's about. And slowly within that agenda, we're seeing this urban thing come on, such as in Fiji or Samoa or even Kiribati, notwithstanding all its problems, it's also trying to put it on the agenda. So we're starting to see planning in a different light.
Many of these countries, they fail sometimes because they use very quick fix kind of solutions that most of it are very foreign to them. Most of us, we still have our roots in our tradition and custom. We have our customary law. We have the traditional people who are also very influential in parts of our everyday life. So these are the kind of people that need to work together, collaborate among themselves, partner amongst themselves in order to deal with this and also make use of the opportunities.
Urban planners and policymakers have been urged to consider not only housing needs, but also land use zoning and standards, integrated urban and rural housing developments, self-help schemes, housing finance, grants and subsidies. The tenure of land continues to be controversial, and in the Pacific, land remains a very sensitive issue. With the ongoing urban developments, the scarcity of land has become an acute problem. In Fiji, urban growth is aggravated by the termination of land leases in the cane belt areas, resulting in many people having to relocate and seek shelter elsewhere.
In the Pacific, I think currently the most pressing issues when we're discussing urbanizations would relate to land tenure issues, security of tenure, security of housing. This is an important issue. If you have lots of people living on a fairly confined space, we are having environmental issues that need to be addressed, particularly impacts on water, sheds, water lenses, urban waste management. We're looking at a bunch of emerging social issues when you have lots of people living in close proximity with each other. Not having much space available to them leads to high density issues, and with high density issues you often have a bit of social tension here and there.
For others, threats of rising sea level have prompted a resettlement response to urban centres.
Most island people, particularly those who live in the low-lying atolls, are also now coming over into the bigger islands, and particularly to Suva. It's a question of survival for them. It's a question of economics for Suva.
For many Pacific Island countries, convincing indigenous people to lease their land for development can be a tedious process.
At the moment, as you see, Villa, it's growing, and a lot of people live in Villa just because of they come here and work and people's businesses. Now, to extend this Port Villa area, that needs a lot of consultations with the customer is concerned, and it's going to take quite a while. We'll tell them that this is the government's intentions to acquire your land for public interest, right? But at the end of the day, it's the customer that says yes and no.
The Republic of Kiribati is comprised of 33 low-lying coral atoll islands. The main island of Tarawa is native land, with the south of Tarawa divided into more than 1,500 small plots extending from the ocean to the lagoon. The government has a 99-year lease arrangement with 20% of these areas to accommodate housing, offices, hospitals and public utilities.
We have basic rate, like people have to pay a tax, like $2 for each person living on BETIO. Even that, we're not collecting all of that because not everyone has $2 to spare.
Every year, the government tries to encourage people to return to their home islands or move to Kirisimasi or Christmas Island.
You have to provide them with developments. The shifting people is not a solution. You need to develop Christmas and then take people there, provide them with employment, with jobs, education, hospital, or the benefits.
Christmas Island lies north of South Tarawa. It has been identified by the government as its next growth center. The island is a ray of hope for many Kiribati looking for a better place to live.
Government has endorsed those reports, and recently we have started to implement the first annual plot release, which involved quarter-acre plots, and these are 450 quarter-acre plots, which are now released for leasehold residential development. Those 450 plots will be shared equally between residents on Christmas now and South Tarawa residents.
For many who have moved to Christmas Island from Tarawa, it has been a big change, with some having to slowly adapt to what is offered on the island.
Life here is much easier than in Tarawa. We have the fishing, great here. The cutting copra, free.
Amidst the population growth on Christmas Island is a large number of young people.
For me, I think it's better to have the good urbanization, so that they can grow there, here, and they have to involve instead of making troubles in the islands.
While the population on Christmas Island is increasing, the developments of infrastructure and job opportunities are not in pace with demands.
It's good to move them from Tarawa because it's crowded there, and I think they're going to have problem also because we don't have any education here, we don't have any employment, only cutting copra that they can get their money, and also for the fishing. That's the only resource that they have here. But we will not worry about the population when they grow, because it's Christmas now, the population is increasing, and we worry about their employment, their futures.
While limited land is a major concern in expanding cities and towns, disputes is another area that is problematic.
I was involved in this land boundary. It's kind of funny because the client that I represent, they have no legal interest in the land, and I've advised them that they don't have any case, but they insist and they say that they have the authority of the landowner to settle there and do whatever they like. So I get this landowner, and we went to have a boundary dispute with the adjacent landowners, and then in the process of the hearing, the boundary determination, the other side began arguing, and they start calling names and stuff. And then my client then returned those things, and then two of the men from our clients, they start fighting with the others, and then there was a row going on, and the court has to be stopped.
Sustainable development equals sustainable urbanisation, and that's clearly something that has to get more and more on the agenda. Hard though it is, because it's cross-sector, it involves people working together, it's coming out of your box and looking laterally, and they're things perhaps that not, a lot of us in the islands are used to doing.
The Pacific Urban Agenda has taken into account the importance of land, land tenure and security, and land management issues. Under PUA, a consultative mechanism will be set up to deal with land disputes and land inheritance by women.
It's a big challenge for the government, and there was a cry from the people, from the village community, saying that it's our land. Why the government is coming to interfere with our land? We need to have some say in whatever consultation process you have. So it was one of the reasons for working on that.
Just outside of Vila in Vanuatu is Olen Freshwind. Set up between 1982 and 1983, this settlement has accommodated homes for close to 1,000 people from the outer islands of Vanuatu.
Since 1994, we became local. Some family staff and inokat water. Inokat water. Blokaramota o Yusimota o Limos Wapout. Hamas Smile, ya Blokotano, Krik Blokaramota, Kam Loblesa. Yusum. And lo sight, lo light, inokat light. Sam lo mi follow me stop lo Blesa. Few no more you work. Lo white man be. Full up lo gata, only make him karan. Only make him karan, only plan him banana, maniok, taro, and only karamika, only stop make him small market lamb. Lo area only stop. Lo win money lamb, only plan him blokaram become all use him lo survive lamb, only stop. Or some lo majority we stop here. We feel stop use some candle with them hurricane light. Lo area we feel stop lamb, full up all young full up lamb. And full up all if in the school only come, you know how to walk. Only stop Koran, only got something to make him, only start to steal, only start to smoke marijuana. And if they try talk no got to you know got something to make him, and only stop quite or something.
The stench from the dump site at Freshwin is overpowering. People here have complained of skin diseases, diarrhea, and other water and airborne diseases.
You local tortilla stop here, why stop here, never pick up. And you local rotten truck, one cousin brother him stop here, Mark job, all truck stop here, got some by stop here, got some nothing by Jesus Christ. Or rotia why soft matty stop. And sorry, bro, tell him the petit lot may stop long soft matty, just the petit lot more potvilla. You stop leaving no. But soft matty stop. And also one Italian finish, one member of parliament, Blamifella Blasia, and Mr. Sleep long way, soft matty stop here, and me leave him all man blame Mr. Bill, man give him only power and long election, and we got power of the constitution, and become a member of the state, and me leave him all got because tablo and blow airport long way international airport, plane stuff all down, Mr. Bill, house with Mr. Bill. I mean all fashioned Blamifella.
Some experts say Pacific urban cities are increasingly unhealthy and dangerous places to live. In Kiribati, the challenge on the environment and people are real.
You see how far we are from the sea. So you probably understand a little bit more the passionate voice that Kiribati, countries like Kiribati and Tuvalu, when they talk about rise in sea level and climate change. Yeah? When it's high tide, you're practically just level with the ocean. So the environment itself is a tough environment. It requires resilience. It requires determination. It's a struggle just to live on these atolls.
Throwing rubbish on the beaches of South Tarawa and into the lagoons have frustrated authorities and the communities alike.
If we tell people not to throw rubbish on the beach, and then they will ask us where we should throw it. So it's just a matter of options that we should provide.
Water from this landfill on South Tarawa seeps into the lagoon when the tide is high.
The way I see it, if we have the proper, like collection facilities, landfills, you know, rubbish bins and all those kind of things in place, and at the same time, as from the office saying this, throw that in there, don't throw that in there, you know, and I think people will, but it will take time, you know.
For Kiribati, the protection of the environment and the need to minimize contamination, marine pollution and solid waste affects a basic need: water. Kiribati depends on groundwater source to feed wells and water holes. Water sources are usually threatened by solid waste pollution. The exodus of young adults into urban centers in search of higher education and paid employment are reasons for the move. the movement of young adults constitutes a very efficient process of rejuvenation of city populations. This accelerates rural and urban change.
But now we find ourselves in a situation where even graduates who finish from universities abroad come back and have to wait for more than a year, sometimes two, to get a permanent job, whether in government or in the private sector or in regional organizations and regional and international bodies represented here on Tarawa. So the limitation on opportunities, I think is a major issue.
Lautoka is the largest city. It accommodates the largest sugar mill in the country. Movement into Lautoka has continued to increase over the years as people relocate in search of employment opportunities in the sugar industry.
When the population increases, the demands of the people also increases, just like in terms of housing, in terms of the amenities, the water. So, and each time a new development takes place, I mean, at the moment, even you would be aware, I mean, Lautoka itself, I mean, I think it's the outcry of the nation, but Lautoka itself was facing a lot of problems of water. I mean, people were not able to get enough water in the taps.
While towns and cities are bombarded with challenges and demands from their taxpayers, towns and city councils are looking at strategies that can meet the anticipated demands. In Fiji, the Sigatoka Municipal Council is one of the smallest but has a growing responsibility. While Sigatoka town itself is very small, the land within the municipality's peri-urban area is very big.
With these areas taken over, the municipality in itself will be accumulating more responsibilities, and it will have to ensure that the services is provided at its best. But here again, why we need to take over these areas is because they are very fragile at the moment, open to squatters and open to so many other social issues which unfortunately cannot be controlled by the government, central government directly, because of their limitations in not being directly governing these places.
With the growing tourism industry, the Sigatoka Town Council is taking its development plans seriously.
We are in the process of designing a 15-year capital investment plan. Actually, this year the council has started off writing up its financial framework very properly through the assistance provided by Commonwealth Local Government Forum. Under this financial framework, 15-year plan will be drawn, capital investment plan. So we'll take it slowly, but every year gradually will go up.
Municipal councils are tasked to look at infrastructural plans that not only meet the demands of urban dwellers, but also pay for the maintenance and services like water, sewerage systems and garbage collection.
Policies that are developed either at municipal level or at subnational or national level reflect people's interests. But more than that, actually include people in their construction and in their monitoring. So people actively participate in deciding what the priorities of municipal councils are, for example, but also help in the monitoring of their implementation of things like service delivery, such as water or sanitation or waste management.
BETIO is the most populated part of South Tarawa. In some parts of the island, there would be more than 10 people sharing a house. Cortez Bonner lives with her husband's family. Cortez and her husband and their children sleep on the veranda while the rest of the family shares the house.
There's a family here. Her husband is from Tuvalu and her wife is from Tarawa. And they have 3 children, but they are all married, and they have their own young ones again, and they have grandchildren, you know.
With rapid urban development, planners and policymakers very often neglect to consult the community. What is required is a participatory approach where the community is consulted and involved in all levels of development.
So participatory planning would be great if it ended up with a plan that isn't a plan that councils, municipal councils implement, but it's a plan that commits municipal councils, communities and non-government organizations to work together to meet jointly agreed upon goals.
In 2007, the Foundation of the South Pacific in Vanuatu, FSPV, organized a workshop bringing together leaders from Freshwater, a suburb outside Vila. These consultations have been an ongoing exercise in Freshwater since 2000, but very little has been achieved. The FSPV hopes the workshop of leaders will bring about a structure to guide the developments of the growing community.
Freshwater will be an example to others so that at least they can manage their own ways of life with the traditional governance systems, and we've got those kind of modern introduced systems. At least we combine them together to at least solve some kind of our problems that we're going to face in future. We know that in future there'll be more and more conflicts coming in, but we understand that depending upon what we strive for at the moment to set those kind of governance systems be in place, so that at least people, they know it and then they abide to it. At the moment we have set a good record. So far the police, they know that if any cases relating to any people from Freshwater, they have to consult the chief. So that's one of the key areas already. It's now known as one of the factors that, people, they start to respect the community of Freshwater.
You may modify me. You see what you may do now is you may modify me. No, I mean you're right. I'm not.
Chiefs have been encouraged to take an active role in dealing with urbanization, particularly looking on peri-urban land issues and social ills like crime and poverty.
If we have people from here, but then we have a group of people come from the island for short term, like coming only for 1 week, 2 weeks. So sometimes it causes a lot of problems and run back to the island. So it's a big problem. We have to address it together with not only Freshwater. This happened in whole village. So what happened is we have to address the issue to Port Villatan Council of Chiefs, my council, and then to Malvat Maori to see how we can work together to minimize the urban trip from the island, and then see how we can cope to try to get this youth that live in Villa to stop all these issues like marijuana smoking and going to the nightclub and doing sorts of life where people don't accept it here. So we have to work together to address this issue.
Black Sands is a settlement outside Vila that accommodates a growing number of people coming into the main island in search of employment, education and a better life. Because it is outside the municipal area, garbage in this area is never collected by authorities. Some use the nearby Tagabe River to dump rubbish. This is the same river people use to bathe and wash their clothes. With the help of One Small Bag Theatre Company in Vanuatu, residents have been taught to recycle organic food waste and use them in gardens and even in the plantation. The garbage is collected on a weekly basis to avoid health risks in Black Sands.
There are about 7 communities who are located along the river. So every week, one of those 7 communities takes the responsibility to go around with a truck that's provided by Small Bag to collect all the rubbish along the river. So that's how they are involved. We asked them to organize themselves, so they give us a group of either women or youth. It's about 9 of them who work every week. So that's the part they play. Also, we provide rubbish bags, and then we help them to build rubbish beds that that are high and away from dogs, spreading them all over the place. So they collect the rubbish, place them on the beds, ready for the truck to come around every week to pick it up.
In Fiji, community participation is in the form of appointments of ratepayers, church leaders and non-council members into municipal subcommittees on development and social issues such as crime prevention.
I'm trying to tell them, look, Suva does not belong to the Suva City Council. As a matter of fact, Suva City Council is just a servant of the people of Suva. So Suva really belongs to the ratepayers and the people who use Suva for various reasons. Suva belongs to them. So in terms of civic pride, they ought really to be asking themselves what they can do for Suva and not so much what Suva City Council can do for them.
Authorities and governments of the Pacific have realized that urbanization is not a necessary evil. For many, this means exploiting the greater good of the urbanization process and capitalizing on its strength rather than on the negative impacts.
It's not all gloom and doom. We need to learn from each other. There are some good things going and we need to acknowledge those good things. Maybe they mightn't comply with internationally accepted practices, but I think what works in a particular situation is, to me, what counts. Because if we try and transplant ideas from overseas, they mightn't fit in properly with the local situations. And I think these are things that we need to keep in mind when we talk about the urbanization issue. We need to look at, firstly, at things that are right under our noses, rather than looking a long way off, because there are some things which are right under our noses which we are missing. And I think these are the things that we need to focus on before we come up with firm plans.
While planning involves achieving short and long-term gains, the tenure of many politicians is often short-term, and development plans, both for the rural and urban areas, can quickly change.
I think we need to be clearly honest with the people themselves, with the attitudes of people, with landowners, that it's my land, I can do what I want with my own land, don't you tell me what to do. And we need to find that balance between the ideas for the family and private owners versus sort of the public realm, and so that overlap is going to take some time to sort of fuse together.
Urbanization must consider culture and traditional practices.
Without this village governance system, without our culture, Samoa will not be able to retain peace and harmony. It's going to blow up just like some of these neighboring countries in the Pacific. Yeah, it is this culture that is holding the unity together of the Samoan people, and that's why I'm very concerned about this issue.
Globalization creates mobilization of resources and personnel. Globalization.
Ultimately, urban issues must balance out with rural and outer island concerns and developments.
As you know, that the churches have different roles. We are concentrating more on the spiritual and moral values to promote to our people as part of Christian life. So we are ready to do our parts, but then the government need to do its part too, plus the local council. If we don't work together, I think very little can be achieved.
The decentralization of services to settlements and rural areas is a good option, but leaders need to commit to the process if services are to be taken out to the people. A multi-sectoral urban policy that integrates all government agencies, involves all communities, engages with development partners and considers primarily the lives of people will make a difference.
It is very, very difficult for one level of governments to be able to do all the things that urbanization is bringing. There needs to be a partnership between different levels of government, the central government, local government, and the traditional. And even the NGOs, they have a part to play, and the traditional leaders as well.
In many ways, the choice is ours. Governments can choose to be much more inclusive of NGOs and communities. Communities can choose to be much clearer about what their priorities are and to commit to helping to meet their needs. NGOs can choose to be much more constructive in their engagement with government. That future is likely to be a good one for urban areas. If this doesn't happen, however, and you have the poor governance that we have currently, we will have a fairly bleak urban future.
We'll build ourselves
While the need to clearly set roles and responsibilities is needed, governments must recognize the importance of municipal councils and their abilities to administer and operate services people in towns and cities demand. The task is not easy and the road is long. With consultations, engagement and the involvement of people and all stakeholders, urbanization may not be that big of a hurdle after all.
This time the dream is more real. The future is about to begin. We'll let our love take us in. We feel the need to move on. City lights are calling, yeah. The city lights are calling, yeah. The city lights are calling.